JIV and CIV made simple. So this is our unit number 2 of AVM. The chapter name is the sampling technique, and let me tell you about the importance of this particular chapter. One case study is asked every year in the CIV examination from this particular chapter, in the especially AVM examination. So if you have command over this particular chapter, surely you will get 5 marks. 5 marks is confirmed for you, right? I'm sure that every year they are asking one case study. So how to solve that case study? We have to build our concept, and how to build our concept we will go through. So first of all, let us see what are the topics which we have to study. Objective, introduction, random sampling, sampling distributions, sampling for normal population, sampling from non-normal population, central limit theorem, and finally we will conclude with finite population multiplier. So we will cover it step by step. So let's start with the first topic that we have is regarding the introduction. So let's discuss the introduction part. So friends, you know the statistics is like the superpower behind a smart decision. So whatever smart decision we take in business and finance, right? So this statistics act like a superpower regarding the decision. How does it help? It helps to reduce the risk, and also it helps to improve the decision making. Decision making means outcomes, right? But here is the catch: we often deal with huge data set, right? The challenge is that the huge data set is there, right? And we often deal with huge data set. Processing all of it almost impossible, right? Because we have a huge data set, and since data set is huge, so processing all of them is almost impossible, right? So that is where sampling comes into our sampling comes in as our hero, right? Now let's talk about the, you think about it. When tasting milk quality, do we taste every packet in the factory? I am providing you an example to make it more clear. Suppose we are tasting milk quality. So do we taste every packet in the factory? No way. Instead, we taste a few samples and use those results to ensure that entire batch is up to the standard, right? So similarly, market survey don't involve interviewing every household in the country. That is too time consuming and expensive. Instead, we use representative sample to gather the insight. So what we use? We use something called representative sample to gather the insight. So even in tea auction, right? Expert testers sample batches of teas to ensure quality before they hit the market, right? In the tea example also you can see, right, what the expert do. You can see here tea tester sample tea batch to ensure quality before auction, right? So it is all about saving time and still making informed decision, right? Or take the example of food sampling. You can take the example of food sampling also, right? So haven't we all tasted a small piece of mithai during Diwali before buying a box? Have Obviously we do it, right? We taste a small piece of mithai during Diwali before buying a box. So sampling help us in decide without overindulging or wasting resources, right? Sampling is not limited to business only. It is used in studies like migration report, right? So instead of interviewing every migrant, researchers sample data to understand why people are moving and what trends are emerging. It is efficient and cost effective, right? And of course the let me show you one more example of this sampling. You can see it here. Of course the gold standard for data collection is a census. You have heard about this census, right? Census. So this is the gold standards for data collection, where every individual is counted, like India's 10-year population census, but that is time intensive and not always practical for every study. So in a nutshell, sampling is a genius way to save time, effort and money. Three things we can solve. We can save time, money and efforts. So that is why sampling is a genius technique to save all these three components while getting reliable results. It is an integral part of statistics and a key concept to ace in your CIV AVM examination. I hope you like this simple explanation. Give the video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Now let's discuss that understanding population and sample in statistics. That is our second topic. So now you can clearly understand that why sampling is super important. Now we will understand that why we understand population and sample in statistics. So friends, today we will break down the difference between population and sample, which is an essential topic for your exam success. First of all, what exactly is population in statistics? What is this population? Do you know what this population? So friends, it is simple. A population includes everything or everyone we are studying, right? It includes everything it includes everything, or it includes everyone we are studying, right? Imagine you are studying the productivity of all employee in a bank. So every employee form the population, right? Everything we are studying, suppose you are studying the productivity of all employee in a bank. So every employee, each employee, let me write it down, each employee form the population, right? Now, but analyzing the entire population can be exhausting, isn't it? That is why sample comes to the rescue. A sample is just a smaller manageable subset of the population, carefully chosen to represent the whole group. So a subset of the population is called sample. Why it is chosen? Because analyzing the entire population, you know it very well that if you analyze the entire population, it is quite exhausting also, right? So that is why sample is just a smaller manageable subset of population, carefully chosen to represent the whole group. Think of it like this: instead of talking to every bank employee, you should survey just a selected few, right? So you might have seen mean, median, mode, and standard deviation. We will cover it in detail. So you can see that now when analyzing both population and sample, we use some tools. We know what is population, we know what is sample, right? So while analyzing both population and sample, we use some tools like mean, median, mode, standard deviation, right? So these tools are like your statistical toolkit, quite reliable and versatile also, right? Now here is an important distinction between statistics and parameter. Let me tell you about this. Let me show you the difference here quite clearly. Yeah, so you can see that statistics describes a sample and parameter describe a population. So if you are calculating the average productivity from your sample of employee, I'm again coming to that particular example which you have previously taken, that you have been assigned the task of calculating the productivity of your employee, right? So this task has been assigned to you. Now if you calculate the average productivity from your sample of employee, so suppose you calculate average productivity from your sample of employee, right? So that is called statistics, right? But if you calculate the same for entire workforce, if you calculate the average productivity from your for the entire workforce, so that we will call as parameter. Easy, right? So understanding population and sample is like building the foundation of a strong statistical mindset. Master this and you are already one step closer to nailing your CIB ABM examination, right? I hope you enjoyed this simplified explanation. Now I hope, see, one way to remember is that S for statistics, S for sample, P for parameter, P for population. So if you ask about what is the characteristics of sample, answer would be statistics, right? So I've just given you the example to make it more clear. Like if you are calculating the average productivity from your sample of employee, that is the statistics, and if you calculate the same for the entire workforce, it is called parameter. See, right? Why? Because we are calculating the average. This is the characteristics of the sample. That is why it is called statistics, right? Now let's move over to the next point. So that is our symbols. Let's talk about the symbols. What are the meaning of symbols? Let's talk about it. Friend, first thing first, let's talk about population. You know, population is the big picture, the collection of all item or individual you are studying. For example, if you are analyzing all bank account in a branch, so that is your population, right? Let me again tell you that if you are analyzing all the I'm again repeating that first of all, let's talk about this population, right? So basically what we are going to do, we are going to see the difference between population and sample. But before that, let me provide you some symbols also. So population is the big picture, collection of all items. Let me write it down. Let me show you here itself. Yeah, you can see population is just like a collection of all items, right? All items. It is the big picture. For example, if you are analyzing all the bank account in a branch, so that is your population because it is a collection of all items. Now instead of studying every single account, you take a sample, because you know for taking every single account it is quite cumbersome. That is why what we do, we take every single account. Instead of studying every single account, you take a sample which is just a small manageable portion of the population. This makes your work quicker and easier while still giving you a reliable insight, right? So here is where the things get interesting. How we denote the number and characteristics for population and sample? Let me simplify it for you. For population we use a Greek word. Let me show you that which symbol we use. So here you can uh, see in the case you must remember that for sample statistics noted by lowercase Roman letter, and population parameter it is denoted by Greek or capital letter. So capital letter for population, and lower small case for small letter for statistics. This way you have to remember. Now let's dive into the symbol. So we denote the number and characteristics for population and for sample. So for population we use Greek or capital letter, right? So for example, you can see the population size is represented by capital N, right? Population size is represented by capital N, and that population mean is represented by mu, and population standard deviation represented by sigma. And for sample we know we use the lower case, like sample size small n, mean x bar, right? And sample standard deviation is small s. Pretty cool, right? So these symbols are like shortcut to make your statistical analysis super efficient. Now here is a quick trick to remember it. Population characteristics are called parameter. Think of them as a full story, and sample characteristics as a statistics, a summary for just a few pages of that story, right? So and there you have it. Now whenever you see this symbol in your Caiib Abm exam, you will know exactly what they mean and how to use them. Symbol might seem small, but they pack a punch when it comes to a statistical analysis. So what is the trick to remember? That population characteristics are called parameter. Think of them as a full story, and sample characteristics are called statistics, a summary from just few pages of that story. Now let's come to the next point. I think it is regarding the random or probability sampling. Let's talk about it. So types of sampling which we are going to discuss, these are of two type, right? Random or probability sampling. So before going to that, let me tell you that types of sampling. So sampling unit, it is a process of selecting respondent. Sampling unit, the unit we study. So there are two methods of selecting the sample. The first is called non-random or judgment sampling, which uses personal knowledge or opinion to identify items. It is based on someone's experience with the population. It is used for pilot or trial sample. Convenient but lack rigorous statistical analysis. It is convenient but it lack rigorous analysis. So it is called non-random sampling, or we can also call it judgment sampling, because it is based on your personal experience, right, with the population, and it use personal knowledge or opinion, right, to identify the items. After this, let's talk about the random sampling, or which we call it the probability sampling. What is the meaning of this random or probability sampling? See, so it's exactly what it sounds like. Every item, every individual in the population has equal chance of being picked. So here is the keyword which you must keep in mind, right? Have equal chance, have a chance of being chosen, or we can say equal chance of being picked, right? This is the keyword to remember, equal chance of being picked. Imagine drawing name out of a hat, right? It is unbiased and it ensures fairness. This type of sampling allows us to perform accurate and rigorous statistical analysis. You can see it enables rigorous statistical analysis, right, which is super handy for making reliable prediction. Now let's look at the judgment sampling, right? Just now we talked about the judgment sampling beforehand. Let me again tell you about it. Here you can see in the judgment sampling what happened, that instead of random selection we rely on experience or judgment of the expert to pick the sample. Where we rely on the experience or judgment of whom, experience or judgment of the experts to pick the sample. We based on the someone experience with the population. So for example, let me give an example. For example, an oil drilling company, for example, let's suppose an oil drilling company, right? It might use the expertise of geologists to decide where to drill based on soil sample. It relies on whom? Geologist, right? Expert on the expertise of geologists to decide where to drill. Or suppose if a city newspaper is planning to launch a new edition, they might do a pilot test on a selected group of readers to gauge the response. But here is the catch. While judgment sampling is more convenient and quicker, it is not as representative of the entire population. This make it harder to draw conclusions that apply to everyone, obviously, because you are based on, you are taking decision based on the experience of few individual. It might possible that not be liked by all the individual. So that is why it is said that judgment sampling is more convenient and quicker, and it is not as representative of the entire population, right? So this make it harder to draw the conclusion, right? And since judgment sampling is not random, you can't perform rigorous statistical analysis with it. Clearly written, convenient but lack rigorous statistical analysis. You can't conduct rigorous statistical analysis with it, right? That is why in most cases random sampling is the preferred method when accuracy is very critical. So you should know that when you have accuracy has very critical element, you should go for the random sampling. So here is the key takeaway from the discussion we have done just now, that that random sampling, which is fair, unbiased and great for statistical analysis, and judgment sampling convenient but less reliable when you need to generalize the result, right? So if you should know the pros and cons of each and every kind of technique that we have regarding the sampling. So you can see the two example which I have just given, that oil drinking company, it uses experienced geologists for judgment sampling, and city newspaper launch, it uses pilot test on judgment. So I provided you example to substantiate the point, right? Now let's talk about the bias sample and their implication. So what is the meaning of bias sample, and what is the meaning of their implication? So friends, what exactly is bias sample? It is when the way we choose our sample favors certain outcome and does not fairly represent the entire population. I am again repeating what I am saying you. We are talking about the bias sample. Bias sample means it is when the way we choose our sample favors certain outcome. So let me highlight the key point. Favor certain outcome means the way we choose some item, we choose our sample, it favors certain outcome and does not fairly represent the entire population sample. So it is when the way we choose our sample favors certain outcome, right? So here the keyword you can see, it favors certain outcome, right, and does not fairly represent the entire population. This can create misleading result, right, that can't be trusted. Let me give you a couple of example. So here is an illustration of a survey with majority of women participants. Imagine a survey on the women bill where most participants are women. Not surprisingly, the results show 95% favorability, right? But is that the full picture? Nope. This is the classical example of bias sample because it leaves out other perspective. Similarly, let's take another example like animation of so you can see that a survey of foreign direct investment in print media. So FDI in print, FDI, foreign direct investment. So that but all the participants are newspaper publisher, right? Whoever has participated in this survey, they are all as newspaper publisher. So naturally the majority oppose it because it could impact their industry. So again, this is bias sample that does not reflect the public opinion, right? So friends, the problem with the bias sample is that they misrepresent the reality. Right, and they produce unreliable result. So if decisions are based on such report, they are likely to go wrong, isn't it? So what is the solution? The solution is that it is simple. The solution is a random sampling, right? So we know the problem, we have the solution. The solution is a random sampling. So this method ensures that every individual in the population has an equal chance of being selected, giving you a representative and a statistically reliable sample, right? So again I am repeating that the solution is simply the random sampling, which gives you, this method ensures that every individual in the population has equal chance of being selected, giving you a representative and a statistically reliable sample. So here is a golden takeaway from this particular insight which we have just gone through, is that avoid bias sample. They are like faulty compasses that mislead you. Always aim for random sampling to get accurate and reliable result. I hope you enjoy this particular insight which I have just gone through. Now let's talk about the random sampling in detail. So friends, we are exploring random sampling, the foundation of the fair and reliable data collection, and guess what? It is simpler than you think. Let's break it down step by step. So there are four main types of random sampling. The first is called simple random, second systematic sampling, third is stratified sampling, and the fourth is cluster sampling. So in this video we will focus on the first one, that is our simple random sampling. Why? Because it is most straightforward and form the base for understanding the other. So imagine we have four teenagers. So let me give you an example to make this concept more clear. Imagine that we have four teenagers A, B, C and D. They are ready to participate in a talk show, but the host want to pick only two of them, right? With the sample of two teenagers, means host want to pick only two. Host want to pick only two of them. So how do we do this fairly? So we do this fairly by using something called single random sampling. So you can see the possible pair. So friends, with simple random sampling, each pair of teenager has an equal chance of being picked. So what are the possible pair? See, question, have you understand the question? There are four teenagers. They want to participate in a talk show with a sample of two teenagers. So in a single sample, there can be only two teenagers possible. So how many possibilities are there? Like you can see, A can club with B, A can club with C, A can club with D, or B can club with C, B can club with D, or C can club with D, right? So how many possibilities are there? As you can see, there are 6 possibilities, right? So friends, with simple random sampling, each pair of teenager has equal chance of being selection. That is the main point. Whenever I say simple random sampling, it means that each sample, that is each pair of teenager, has equal chance of being selected. So the possible pair are AB, AC, AD, BC, BD and CD. So what is the probability of selecting any one pair? You know the formula of probability. This P means probability. Whenever you see this word P written, probability, what is the full form? What is the formula of probability? That means number of favorable outcome upon total number of outcome, isn't it? This is the formula of probability. Now how many total number of outcome are there? There are 6 number of outcome. And what is the number of favorable outcome? So AB, there is only one case, so 1 upon 6. AC, there is only one case, so 1 upon 6. AD, there is only one case, so 1 upon 6. BC, one case, so 1 upon 6, isn't it? So you can see, you can find the probability of each sample using the method. But what is the chance of any specific teenager like A being in the final sample? So this one we have got it. Now the second question is, what is the chance of any specific teenager, let's say A, being in the final sample? Let's see. So you can see that A can appear in AB, AC or AD, right? Three possible pairs A can appear in. So in the 3 out of the 6 pair, how many pairs are there? There are 6 pair. And how many pair here appearing? 3 pair. So that is why the chance of A can appear in either AB, AC and AD. So that is 3 out of 6 pair. So the probability of A being selected is 3 upon 6, which simplifies to 1 upon 2. So the same goes for B, C and D also. You can see the probability for being selected is BC, BD and BA or AB, right? So there are 3 cases where B is being selected. So his probability, the probability of B selection is also 1 upon 2. Similarly, C of B is 1 upon 2. So here is the key takeaway, that the simple random sampling gives everyone an equal chance of being picked, right? So whether it is for a talk show, a survey or your CIB question paper examples, this method ensures fairness and accuracy. So remember this keyword, which is our fairness, and the second is accuracy, right? So this is ensured by our simple random sampling. So remember, mastering the concept like this can give you the edge you need to ace your CIB examination. Now let's move on to the next concept. So I hope this is clear now. Now key concept in sampling, let's talk about it. So friends, sampling might sound technical, but it is something we encounter in daily life. Today I will simplify key concept in sampling. So let's start with the 2 basic type of sampling we have. The first is called sampling without replacement, and the second is sampling with replacement. So here is how they work. If we talk about the without replacement, so imagine drawing a slip of paper from this ball and not putting it back. So suppose this is the ball, right? This is the ball, and there is a slip of paper, right? Or suppose there are marble. Let me write marble, or you can say marble, right? So what you are doing, that imagine you draw marble from this ball. So there are several marble, and you draw one marble from this ball, right, but not putting it back. You are drawn, but you are not putting it back again. So that slip, that marble can't be drawn again, right? Simple, right? So imagine that you have take one marble outside of this ball and you are not putting that marble back into the ball. So can you tell me whether the marble can't be drawn, that particular marble cannot be drawn again because it has not been put into the ball. How can you can draw the same marble again? Because it is outside the ball, right? Because you have not put the marble again in the ball, right? So this is called without replacement. And if we talk about with replacement, so now suppose if I draw a marble, right, and put back before drawing the next one. Suppose I have drawn it and then I have again put that marble into it. So I have done two things. First of all, drawn it and again put it, right? So it means that the same marble can be picked multiple times, isn't it? Suppose the next time you draw, the same marble can be picked. It is possible that you pick the same marble. The next time you draw, the same marble can be picked. So it is like giving every marble a second chance, isn't it? So friends, hopefully this is clear. So this is called sample with replacement. That is why it is called with replacement, because we can, replacement is possible, right? Because you are replacing them back in the slot, so allowing the same student to draw again. So I hope it is clear now. So now let's talk about finite and infinite population. So I hope what is the sampling with replacement and without replacement, the concept is clear. So without replacement means we are not putting that particular sample back into the population size, or means you are not putting that marble back into that particular ball. And with replacement we know it very well. Now if we talk about finite versus infinite population, so a finite population is the one we can count completely, like our 4 teenager here. So it can be counted easily, that is called finite. And infinite means what? Infinite means here is more theoretical. Think of it all the prime number. There is no end to them. All the prime number. These are type of infinite population, right? So finite, I told you earlier that finite population is one which we can count completely, and infinite means one which we cannot count, right? So think of all the prime numbers, right? So they are our infinite population. Now in real life we treat very large population as infinite because counting every single member can be time consuming and expensive also. So what we do in real life, that we treat members we treat very large population as infinite. So infinite population is used for very large population, right? However, if we have unlimited time and resource, we could enumerate even a finite population, right? So an enumeration of finite population possible with unlimited resource and time. Now here is your key takeaway from the point which I have just discussed now. First thing we have talked about is the sampling without replacement. Without replacement means no repeat. You are not repeating anything. Sampling with replacement means you are giving every item a second chance. That is called repetition. You are giving an every item as, remember, these things will help you in solving the numericals. Whenever I say without replacement means no second chance, and with replacement means we are giving every item the second chance. Finite population are countable, think a small group, and infinite population are theoretical but practical for large scale problem. So understanding this concept will help you make sense of a statistical method in Caiib examination and real world application. Got it? Great. If you find this explanation useful, I hope you find it. Now let's talk about how to do random sampling. So let me give you an example to make it more clear to you. So imagine you are selecting 10 employees for a special project, right? So imagine you are selecting 10 employees for a special project. Here is the simple method. Write each employee name on a slip of paper. Drop all the slip into a box. You can see, drop the slip in a box, and now mix the slip thoroughly, right? So give the box a good shake to mix them up. Now finally pick 10 slip randomly. Now what you do? You pick 10 slip randomly. Congratulations, you have got your random sample, right? This is how you got your random sample. Sound easy, right? But here is the catch. This work great for a small group. If you are dealing with large population, things get tricky, right? I hope it is clear what you did, that you write the name of each and every employee on a slip of paper. You drop this paper, you drop this slip in a box, you mix the slip thoroughly, right? And then draw 10 slip at random, right? So this is how you got the random sample. But the limitation is that this work with a small group. If we have large population, the things got tricky, because mixing 100 or thousands of slip properly is tough. It is also time consuming and not very practical, right? So what is the smarter way? We use random numbers, right? So what is the smarter way? Because the challenge with the slip of paper is that it works well with small group but problematic with large population. The problem is that what is the challenges we face when we deal with the large population? That mixing 100 or 1000 of pay slip properly is tough, and also it is time consuming and not very practical. So what is the smart way? The smart way is to use the random number. A computer program can scramble number in no time, isn't it? A computer program can scramble number in no time, right? Or you can use a table of random digit. Every number from 0 to 9 has an equal chance of appearing, and each sequence of number is equally likely. No bias, just pure randomness. So the probability of any one digit from 0 to 9 is equal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, each one has equal chance of being appearing, right? And each sequence of number is equally likely. So here is a difference, so how we can differentiate the point which I have discussed just now, that the slip of paper is old school charm based for a small group, but random number is modern magic which is perfect for large population. So what is the key takeaway? So friends, the key takeaway is that random sampling ensure fairness and reliability. For a small group we can use the slip method. For bigger population, let technology handle it with random number. I hope this makes the concept of random number crystal clear, how it is used to simplify our task. Now let's talk about the type. We are talking about the type of sampling. The first type we can see the systematic sampling. So when in systematic sampling, what we do, we pick element at a regular interval. So here let me write you the keyword constant interval, or we may call it a regular interval. So what we do, we pick elements at regular interval. For example, imagine you are on a college campus and you need to interview a student. You start at a random name in the first 20 and then choose every 20th student. Easy, right? So why this method handy? So again I am repeating that what you did, you started a random number. So first of all, you are on a college campus and need to interview a student. You started a random number in the first 20 and then choose every 20th student. So the first 20 student you have choose, 40th student you have choose, 60th student you have choose, 70th student you have choose, right? So why this method handy? Basically it ensures that you consistently cover the population, right? Basically you are interviewing every 20th student, 20th, 40, 60, only 20th student you are interviewing, right? So this method comes handy because it ensures you consistently cover the population. But there is a twist. The twist is that while every individual has an equal chance of being picked, not every combination of people can be in the sample, isn't it? Every element has an equal chance of being selected, but each sample does not. I'm again repeating that every individual have equal chance of being picked, but not every combination of people in the sample. Not every combination of people, right? Picture like this: you assign number from 0 to 99 to the employee and select every 10th number starting at random point, right? Simple, right? But here is the catch: some employee can't be selected together, like 10 and 11, 20 and 21. So what you did, you assign number between 00 to 99 to each employee, and you pick every 10th number starting from a random point. So can you tell me whether these two can be selected? 10 and 11, no possible, not possibility. 20, 21, not possible, right? So I hope it is clear that while every individual has equal chance of being picked, but not every combination of people can be in the sample. So you assign number. I given you example. Now let's talk about the potential hiccups. Okay, the potential hiccups is that systematic sampling can sometimes fall into trap if your interval align with a pattern. For instance, imagine checking how many people eat out by surveying on Friday. Since it is close to the weekend, you might think everyone is dining out. So systematic sampling can occur if the chosen interval coincides with the pattern in the population, right? So since it is close to the weekend, you might think that everyone is dining out. So here is the key takeaway. The easiest thing that systematic sampling is great for saving time and effort, but be mindful of patterns in your population. Avoid bias and you will get reliable result. I hope this helps you understand the concept of systematic sampling clearly. What we do, the basic motto is that we out of the entire population, we make a rule to select every nth number of items, right? That is what we have to do. in the systematic sampling. The second type of sampling we have is called stratified sampling. Let's see what it is all about. So imagine you have a population divided into different groups. So the population is divided into different groups. These groups are called strata. So simply remember that what is a strata? A strata means groups, right? So, and they can be anything from age group or to socio-economic classes like young adult, senior citizen, or people from different income bracket. Now here is how stratified sampling works. First you pick a random number of people from each stratum. So you know there are different strata that you have. From each stratum, what you do, you pick a random number of group. You pick a random number of people, and the number you choose is based on how big each group is compared to the whole population. Let me show you the approach. Yes, here is the approach clearly written. That what you do, that you pick a random number of people from each stratum, and number you choose, how many people you should select, is based on how big each group is compared to the whole population. For example, if 30% of your population is under 20, so you will choose 30% of your sample from that group. I am again repeating that you pick a random number of people from each stratum, and the number you choose is based on how big each group is compared to the whole population. Suppose, let me give you an example. Suppose you choose 30%, right? Suppose if 30% of your population is under 20, less than 20 years, so you will choose 30% of your sample from that group. So this is the first approach. The second approach is that you choose the same number of people from each stratum, but then you adjust the final result based on the size of each group in the total population. So this method makes sure you give the bigger group more weight in your final analysis. So what you did in the second approach, that you choose the same number of people, equal number of elements. You choose the same number of people from each stratum, right? From first stratum also you choose 10, from the second stratum you also choose 10, from the third stratum you also choose 10, right? You choose the same number of people from each stratum, but then you need to adjust the final result based on the size of each group in the population, right? And what we did in the first approach, what we did, you pick a random number of people from each stratum. It is not that you pick same number of people. No, from a stratum number 1 you might pick 5, from a stratum number 2 you might pick 6, from a stratum number 3 you might pick 7, right? So random number of people you are picking from each stratum, and this number you are picking is based on the how big each group is compared to the whole population. Like if I say, if the 30% of your population is under 20, so you will choose 30% of your sample from that group. So these are two approach, right? So friends, why use this? Simply it makes sure that everyone has a chance to be included, no matter their group, and it is more accurate, right? So this method number 2, which we have just talked about, is more accurate because because in this case what we do, we draw an equal number of elements from each stratum, so it gives chance that all people to be included. It makes sure that everyone has a chance to be included, and it is more accurate than random sampling alone. We are talking about stratified sampling. Why stratified sampling? Why to use this stratified sampling? Because it makes sure everyone has chance of being selected, no matter how the large the group, and it is more accurate than random sampling alone. You will get a clear picture of the entire population. So when should we use stratified sampling? When your population is made up of distinct group. Remember, whenever population is divided into different groups, then you can use this as stratified sampling, right? Suppose on the basis of income, on the basis of age groups, on the basis of socio-economic classes, if you categorize your population into different group, it is like interviewing people from different department in the company to understand how each one contribute to the whole. So here is the real magic. A stratified sampling not only gives you more precise result, but it also accurately reflects the characteristics of the population, so you can make decision with great confidence. I hope this explanation help you understanding the stratified sampling, that it accurately reflects the characteristics of the population, and it is more precise than the sampling than other sampling method. Then we have something called cluster sampling. Let's talk about it. So friends, think of it like this. Instead of choosing random number from the entire population, you divide the population into group or cluster, right? So what you do, instead of choosing the random number, you divide the population, whatever population you have divided, into cluster. Either we can cluster or you can call it group. You divide it to cluster or group. Then you pick a few cluster randomly and study everyone in those chosen group. Pretty neat, right? What you did, you pick a few cluster randomly, right? and study everyone in those chosen group. So for example, a market research team could look at a city map divided into neighborhood or block. So let me give you an example of this cluster sampling. So suppose a market research team is there, right, and he could look at the city map. So what it does, here you can see, this is the example we're talking about. A market research team, he can use a city map and divide the territory, and you can say divide it into neighborhood or blocks, and randomly pick a few blocks, to the certain number of blocks, randomly pick a few blocks, right. Then they interview every single household in those selected block. Then they interview every selected household in those single selected block. So it is like zooming in on a few area and getting a full picture of them. So here is a big advantage, that cluster sampling gives you more precision at a lower cost compared to simple random sampling. So if you talk about if you compare the cluster sampling and simple random sampling, so you know that the cluster sampling gives you a more precision at lower cost, right. Cluster sampling gives you a more precision at a lower cost, right, as compared to simple random sampling. Instead of going door to door across the entire city, you just focus on few area. It is faster and more affordable. What market research team did, that he look at the city map, he divided into neighborhood or block and randomly pick a few blocks. Then they can interview every single household in those selected block. It is like zooming into a few area and getting a full picture of them. But how is this different from stratified sampling, right? So we know that cluster sampling is more efficient method as compared to the simple random sampling. The reason we know it very well, right? But the question is, what about the how to compare the stratified and the cluster sampling? Let's talk about it. Why question is, why this cluster sampling is more efficient than simple random sampling? So because of the one word which I will say, because of the efficiency, or we can say precision. Precision is more appropriate here, because of the precision, right, at a lower cost. Now how is it different from stratified sampling? Well, let's compare. In stratified sampling, the group are very different from each other. Think of dividing people by age or income group. You make sure that each group is well represented by picking from each one, right. So you make sure that each group is well represented by picking at least one from every group, right. But in the cluster sampling, what we do, the group or cluster you choose are similar to each other, but there are variation within them. The groups are similar, but inside there are variation. While in stratified sampling, what was happening? The stratified sampling, what was happening, that the groups were different. The groups are very different from each other, like dividing people by age, dividing people by income group, right. So in what happened in cluster sampling? In the cluster sampling is that it is also divided into groups and cluster, but there is a variation between the groups, right. Groups are similar, but there is variation inside them. So cluster sampling is your so try to understand that like picking random block in a neighborhood where each block might have different people inside. I am giving you example of the cluster sampling. Like suppose you pick random suppose that you are picking random blocks in neighborhoods, right. You are picking random blocks in neighborhood, and you know that we are talking about cluster sampling. I am giving you an example of cluster sampling, that you know in both the method the entire population is divided into group, but in the case of cluster sampling there are no variation between A and B, but inside there are variation. In the A inside there are variation, right. So this hope make you clear the concept. Now if your goal is to set a precise and representative sample without spending a fortune, so cluster sampling is your goal for it.